Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So tonight's video is going to be last night's live analysis. Fortunately, the people that did tune in to see it live got to see most of it, and depending on where you were in the world, really determined how much of it you saw, because it did cut out whenever I would play a little bit of Prince's performance. And it's just the case that unfortunately after I've finished, because it's been processed, it's then been blocked on copyrights, and I know that only about 30% of the subscribers to the channel can see the video. So I've re-edited the whole analysis and cut out the bits of the performance, so now you'll be able to watch all of the analysis parts of the video. If you want to check out the video that I was watching, or at least parts of the performance that I was watching, I'm going to put a link to a video in the description below, and hopefully that one will work so you guys can watch it, even if it's just a shortened version of the performance. In the live analysis, I watched the whole 12 and a bit minutes of it, so it is a long analysis because it was a long performance video that we were looking at. But I will just roll straight into it now. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live analysis. It's Phil here from Wings of Pegasus. As always, if you do enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. We're going to be taking a look at Prince, and I've just grabbed my guitar while that intro was just finishing, so I'm definitely going to need it. This is going to be one of those videos that we could analyze for the next 5 years, so you'll have to strap yourselves in, because this is a performance that is just over 12 minutes in length, so it is long. Not that you notice it when you're watching it because it just flies by, but I am going to be stopping the video and jumping in quite regularly, so there's a link to the original video in the description below, so you guys can click on that if you want to watch it without me interrupting it, which I highly recommend. But we are going to be breaking things down and just look at such an iconic performance, because there are so many things that can be pointed out, and I will try my best to do that. So thank you everybody, by the way, for joining me tonight in that live chat room. Hello, and all of you early birds in there who've been in there for a while, thank you for joining me tonight. So let's get the guys up on screen. Also, from the copyright perspective, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I will be jumping into it quite a lot. I'm not sure whether that'll help or not, but hopefully we'll be okay. And without further ado, let's get things rolling. Okay, I'm just going to jump in here. Taking it right back to the beginning, the rain is something that we've got to mention, the fact that it just hammered it down on the day, which is something that Prince, when he was told that it was raining and about the show, whether they're going to go ahead with it or not, he said, can you make it rain harder? Because it makes it so much more dramatic. It's already dramatic without rain, but everything kicking off. The other thing is the safety worries that they had about the dancers being in high heels, and the way that Prince is going to be walking up and down that catwalk, the runway at the front of the stage as well. Just the whole stage, because it's the symbol, the way that it's lit up as well. It doesn't just come on, but it runs around like a racetrack, and it's so well done and so dramatically done. But that's the point, putting on such a show already, and the way that we had the lightning, which has been superimposed over the cameras, so it didn't actually do that on the day, but all the sound effects. It is all about the show, but just as much about the technical ability and the ability that Prince had in so many different areas of performance. Because you talk about being charismatic, being a showman, he had that. Being a great vocalist, he had that. Being a fantastic guitar player, he had that. And being able to get into a studio and record all of the instruments himself, just make an album himself. And having such a range vocally as well. We will touch on that. Like I said, there's so many things to mention here. I'm sure that there'll be things that I'll be missing out that I could be mentioning. I will put a little bit of a spotlight as well on things to listen out for when we're watching the performance, because it was so close to going wrong, and I think that the conditions had a lot to do with that. There'll be points at which, and I might pause it and rewind it so that maybe you guys can hear it. You will hear it very clearly if you're wearing headphones, but maybe not, you might be able to spot it, where you almost, you don't quite, but you almost lose the connection to Prince's guitar because he's using a wireless system. He's got a jack coming out of his guitar, a jack going into his receiver that's going to actually be sending. The receiver is going to be by the mixing desk, so it means that his guitar is being sent via radio waves to the desk, and from the desk he's then got a jack coming out of the receiver into the mixing desk, and there are a lot of connections there. So if one of them is slightly dodgy, if one of them gets slightly wet, it could just stop you hearing what he's playing on the guitar. And I think that does actually happen right at the end. I will point it out, but you won't notice it. It sounds like we almost hear a secondary feed of his guitar that isn't the main line. But you're not going to notice this when you're watching it, and you probably haven't noticed this when you are watching this, but I will point these things out. So again, I said this could go on for hours, but getting back to the beginning of the performance, we've got just a perfect choice, because starting with Queen and We Will Rock You is going to be the perfect choice for a big stadium gig, and really starting with a bang. And the fact that it's been sped up as well in order just to give it a little bit more energy. You've got the fire that explodes when he starts, and then he rises and gets raised from the bottom of the stage, so he just appears. So it is really dramatic, and then we get straight into Let's Go Crazy, and again upbeat here and really putting the energy into the performance. But you can't take your eyes off Prince because of that charisma and the showmanship side of everything that he's about musically. He just throws it out there, and he's never one of those guys that would be seemingly nervous. He was just all over it, and it doesn't matter how big the crowd, he will get everybody involved, as we will see in this performance, because we're talking about a full stadium here, and he's just that center of attention, and he loves it, and it's what Prince was all about. But we will get back into the performance. What I love as well is the way that Prince just dots in solo guitar here. We've got lots of lead sections, and it just demands your attention because you've got his voice as the lead instrument, and then you've got his guitar as the lead instrument as well. Being such a fantastic player, it meant that he could hold your attention with just his guitar work if he wanted to, but also having that fantastic voice. So we are going to jump into it again. I might be stopping it, and let me just check that my guitar is on and working and turned up. Hopefully you guys can hear that. I'm just checking the levels and everything, but it should be okay. Let's jump back into the performance, and I'll probably stop it immediately, but let's see how we get on. And there we have it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Having the song and then just breaking away into a lead solo section, walking just to the front of the stage, melting your face, walking around, going back to a vocal. And another thing to point out and to look out for when Prince is playing is the way that he dots in these little trills when he's playing his lead work. And there, here, if you are wanting to play along, you want to be in F sharp and taking this shape up the octave. That's what Prince does, and he gets into the major notes of his straight into that, and then we get this bend on the B string, and then just such a strong bend, actually going above that tone and having the control. The other thing is that when he gets into, and he's applying that vibrato, he's playing a telly here, so it means that he's not applying that with the whammy bar. That's what some players do, but he's got total control of the vibrato. And if he didn't have that, he wouldn't be able to control it in the way that he does. But he absolutely nails it, gets back into the rhythm, back into now a vocal, and let's jump back into it again. I'm just going to jump in here, getting the crowd involved as well, a massive part of the show, and getting everybody to sing along. And also, rather than doing the rhythm work here and playing the chords, he's just strumming whilst keeping all of these strings nice and quiet, but not quiet enough to stop that rhythm coming across, but just to get things motoring along. the reason that he wants no chords coming in here, his guitar's quite high in the mix, but he wants to be able to talk to the crowd. He wants them to be able to hear what he's saying so that they can join in and they can hear his vocals to then try and copy what Prince is singing or the noises that he's making. If he was just thrashing out chords, you wouldn't be able to hear that because there'd be too much going on. So just having that and that kind of thing, even letting a little bit of a string at the top come out and give you a little bit of a harmonic like that, it just sounds great because you are filling in sound while achieving the effect of not filling in sound with chords. So you're getting all of that rhythmic drive and the percussive sounds of hitting the strings as well. It's just really going to keep things moving along, but let's get back into it again. I'm just going to jump in again. I know I am absolutely dissecting this, but let me actually get this off the screen, even though we're going to be jumping back into it straight away. But again, those trills, in this case, we are still up an octave here. Exactly the same principle here. And we had this same bend with that control of vibrato, but then also we went down. And the important thing here is, because we're now taking our notes from the major scale, what's happening is Prince has really cleverly used these notes, which, if you know pentatonic shape 1, you'll know that all of those notes, apart from on that B string where we started, that is going to be our major scale. But then the minor pentatonic, as we work our way down, we're now minor. And the reason that he's chosen these notes is because when you're playing, and if I was, you can do hammer-ons and pull-offs, and he's throwing his arm up there, so I'll slow it down a little bit. And if you've got enough distortion on your guitar, then you can get those notes to sound. I know that Prince has got a really heavy tone and he gets really heavy at the end, and he's got a lot of sustain on there, so you're not necessarily going to hear a lot of that telly sound coming across because of the distortion, but once you do crank that up, it's going to be a lot easier to hammer on and pull off and be able to hear those notes when you're not actually hitting the string. You can do whatever you want with that right hand, but you're still going to hear the notes. So it's just interesting in the way that Prince moves across those strings and uses that same technique, but he puts the showmanship side into it because that was just as much part of it as well as just playing some great lead guitar. But let's get back into this. And by the way, we've got the full marching band who are actually doing choreography. So we've got one hell of a show going on, and we're just about to get into Baby I'm a Star. But just to mention about the end part of that lead, again, listen out for that. The little trills going on there, but also that bend on that high E string. And all of that really cool stuff going on that Prince has just got down. But to also throw in there about playing, singing at the same time, he's very much jumping from the singing then into lead sections, so we get that separate voice. But also when he is singing, he does sometimes throw in some fills underneath that just sit in there so well. Let's get back into the performance. And I almost forgot to get Prince back on stage because I'm enjoying it so much, but hopefully you guys can see it. Let's get back into it. Your hands. And just a quick point about the fact the camera's cut away from Prince while he goes through the transition from getting rid of his guitar back into the vocal. We will be seeing transitions later on, but you get the impression that Prince probably did say, because he has control of everything and was such a perfectionist with the show, you do get the impression that he said, cut away when I change guitars so that when you come back to me, I'm now free and back into a vocal. And this is the mark of the level of ability that we're talking here vocally, that he can now get rid of the guitar. And a lot of performers do have that guitar almost like a safety net and something that they don't necessarily feel comfortable on stage with out their guitar. They need it in front of them to just put a little bit of a barrier and to have a little bit of confidence on stage. But Prince just gets rid of that guitar now into a vocal, and when he was doing those whoa-wees and getting everybody to join in the crowd, if you're actually looking at the notes that he was hitting there, I know that it just sounded like he was throwing it in randomly, but I have just checked it out to see what he was doing and the pitch that he was hitting, and it was a D6. And guys will know how ridiculously high that is. I wonder if I can find the piano and get it up on stage in order for you guys to see it and if it will appear. There you go. So with the male high C, you can see that the diagram that I've had in previous analysis videos just shows you the C5, because that is where the high note for guys really gets to really pushing their chest voice. It's really high up, but you might be able to get an appreciation of the height that we're talking when we talk about not a C6 but a D6. So we're over an octave above high C. That's what Prince was doing. It's also interesting, just while I'm talking about ranges, I'm going to keep this up on screen because later on, when we get into one of the later songs, and I think it might actually be Purple Rain, where he goes quite far down to a D3 and an E3 as well, and it sounds like that is the bottom of his range. He's really low down there. And if I'm playing the when I say that note, it doesn't sound low because it's a note that sits within my range and a comfortable range, but for Prince, his voice sat a lot higher. So it meant that he could get up to really high notes, but the lower notes, he couldn't go down very far. So by the way, he still had, well, in this performance, I think it's around 2.5 octaves of range. So I'm not saying that Prince didn't have a mighty impressive range. He probably had 3 or 4 octaves from his low note to his high note, but in this performance you do get an appreciation of where his lowest note is because he does sing that in Purple Rain. But let me get everything off the screen and we'll jump back into the performance and try and get through this analysis. We're only almost 4 minutes into it, but we'll keep on going, see how we get on. Just to jump in here, you can't beat a little bit of Creedence Clearwater Revival, Proud Mary, just jumping into that. But notice as well, this really seems to me to be so similar to Queen when they played at Wembley and they had their set just planned out to the second so that they knew exactly how long they had and they knew exactly how to get through each of the songs they wanted to play so that they didn't run over the time limit. And this is another case of being in the middle of a sporting event, so it would have been very, very strict on time. But Prince has worked this all out and rehearsed it to the nth degree to get everything so slick to the point where now we've got just what sounds like a great instrumental breakdown, keeping everything going, but it is in there for a reason so that he gets to transition back to playing the guitar. And we did see him just going to the side of the stage to get that guitar on, but the instrumental break is allowing him the time to do that. If he went too quickly into the next song, it's not going to work because he might actually struggle getting the guitar on and then might lose connection. Anything can happen. So it is so well rehearsed and it was so well planned out musically so that it just goes smoothly and nobody ever questions the fact that there's so much transitioning going on here from the performance perspective and just getting the guitar on, getting rid of the guitar, singing with the microphone, going back, getting the guitar, and then switching over guitars by the end of the performance as well. So a lot going on here that might fly under the radar, but let's get back into it. Okay, just to bring up the fact that we've gone into All Along the Watchtower there, and just telling the drummer to counter in, like I said, so well rehearsed. And here, so we're starting, we've got our C sharp if you want to be playing along or attempting to, but the great thing about this, I can't change my tone unfortunately, so I'm a little bit heavy here, but we've got all these fills. Actually, I might rewind it so that we can get an appreciation of the understated playing as well as just pushing everything to the edge and showing you great technique and vibrato and just such expressive playing, we've got the other expression here, which is just low down dynamically, but so much control going on. So I am going to rewind it, which will make the analysis even longer, but we're just going to listen to some of these lines. There you go, that's that. That kind of thing, and it's so understated. By the way, if you want to get these tones, the best thing that you can do, as you can see here, great picture that I've paused it on, because you can see the way that we're actually at the neck pickup here. So it means that we get all of these lower notes that are going to be, you start to get those just roundness to the sound, the whole tone that is Fender Strat, and the way that Jimi Hendrix used to just flicker over to that neck pickup as well, and we get such a great tone here. So we've got really heavy tones but understated tones like this, where you can just appreciate the playing. But I'll just let it play through. Outside in the cold distance, a wildcat dig ground, just a little tweak to the major there. That major note at the top, and then a little bit of whammy bar as well. Tiny little touches, tiny details, but as a guitar player, these are the kind of things that you just listen and think, oh, that's really cool, and then you just want to try and play it yourself and find out what Prince is doing. But let's get back into it. And the wind began to howl. Even that, just going, it's just hitting open strings and allowing them to ring out. This is the thing about top guitar players, is they don't care about hitting open strings and just using it as an expression. It's not about thinking which notes are playing. It's about what is my guitar going to be able to give me to get across the expression or the feeling that I am feeling. And sometimes players do this, and you might get somebody who writes a textbook and says, oh no, don't hit open strings, you want to be perfectly clean all the time. And then you look at the top players, they're not playing from a textbook, they're playing from their own head and just literally communicating it through the guitar. So it's getting into that mindset and trying to play like this yourself. You're never going to be able to perfectly copy an artist like Prince or any other top guitarist, because they're just expressing themselves. The only thing that you can do is try and express yourself the same way, and then you'll have your own expression. And it's great to see little things like that, where he just hits open strings and doesn't care about the notes, because he's just in the performance, and it doesn't detract from the performance, it adds to it. But let's get back into it. Just to jump in here, because we've got that same, we're a little bit dirtier here, so I'll turn my volume all the way up to 10 to allow all of that tone out. So this is the other thing that Prince, you can see when he's playing, isn't playing bar chords here, he's playing power chords, and he's using his thumb as the root note and coming across with his third finger and literally just playing it like that. So you can totally forget about your first finger if you want to. It is down to that effective A, but we're not playing bar chords here. So, and it depends how you play your power chords. I don't play them like this, so it all feels a little bit weird, but it's interesting how different players approach it in different ways. And when he is up into that, play exactly the same way, that he still throws in a little trill here and there, something that he just loved to do but sounds so cool. Let's get back into it. There we have a little bit of lead applying the whammy bar. And again, if you're wanting to play along, we're going to be pretty much in a I think we had a line kind of like that. All of that really cool stuff going on, and also to mention that whammy bar vibrato, because that gives such a unique sound to the lead that we haven't heard yet, because we've had Prince vibratoing on frets at the top of bends, but not really going to that whammy bar. But now he's got out the Fender Strat, so it means that he's got this. He can start to give the notes a totally different personality, which he does, and when you just pair that with the technique, it is such a great sound. And we've also got really heavy tone here, so we haven't been hearing this kind of lead yet. So the lead has progressed throughout the whole performance. It's a gradual journey, and I'm not talking in one song, I'm talking the whole performance. So it means that from the beginning of this 12-minute, just over 12-minute performance, it is seamlessly put together as a whole mini show. That's the way to describe this. And the fact that we've got covers in here and original material really mixes it up, but it's something that Prince has sat down, planned, and put on a show. And it works perfectly because you never question how long has gone. You think, oh, I'm losing interest here. How long's left? Because I want the football to start again. You're just totally into this performance. So it's flawlessly executed. Let's get back into it. Just look at that look across the stage. Such confidence and just the facial expressions. Some people need to put on a massive show and move around a lot and kick their legs up in the air. But with Prince, just a look gets your attention and puts so much meaning into the performance because of that attitude that he's got, the confidence. Now, guitar players out there, if you listen in really carefully there, you can hear a little bit of connection failure between the lead and the guitar. And this is what I mentioned about Prince having that wireless system, which is essential for this performance. If he was trying to get around the stage and he was connected to his amp with his lead, it wouldn't work because he's got dancers, they might trip over it, it'll be a nightmare. So he's gone for the wireless setup here, and you can hear, we do cut away to the fireworks, and this is what I thought originally, that oh, maybe it's just the fireworks making noise, but if you put on headphones, you'll be able to hear that this connection that the guitar has and the leads that are feeding his signal to the mixing desk is really fragile, and it does cut out a little bit later. You won't notice it, but I will point it out. You can hear the guitar. I'm not going to do it on my amp because it might deafen you because it's quite a nasty sound, but every guitarist will know this. When you've got a dodgy connection with the jack and you just fiddle it around a bit to try and make sure it's solid, and it just cuts out, and it doesn't go as far as totally disconnecting, because then you hear, especially if the lead is touching or the jack is touching metal, it will just go duh, and you'll just get a drone. Whereas this is on the edge of disconnecting, but luckily it doesn't quite. And I think this is probably something to do with the rain and it being so wet, but fortunately we do get away with it. And there, I'm just going to rewind that, because look at the way that Prince, when he moves his shoulder up and comes down, you can hear the noise of the connection go. It's a low frequency noise. If you've got headphones on, you will be able to hear it. But the good thing is that you can look at Prince's movements. When his guitar goes up and then down, it obviously puts a little bit of stress on that jack, and it doesn't disconnect, but you can hear that there is a little bit of a fault, or just the connection isn't quite as solid as you want it. But have a little listen. There, just that little click, if you did hear that, that is a jack just being moved and not disconnecting, fortunately, but it shows that it is close. There we go, lowest note. You can really hear vocally where that sits in Prince's range, and this is the... I did mention that D3 earlier about his range and where that sits, and na. When I sing it, it doesn't sound low, but you can hear the way that Prince's voice is naturally a lot higher. It sounds like a low note to him. And just playing that, that's going to be an F. And if I went, no, I can almost get, yeah, if I really try, not that I'm going to be singing down the F, but I can get almost the octave below that for because my voice sits a lot lower naturally than Prince's, but it means that his range would stop around there, or that D3. So a lot of singers will be able to go a lot lower than that, but Prince can definitely take his voice a lot higher than pretty much 99% of other vocalists. And when I said earlier about adding this together with his ability at guitar and instrumental ability, showmanship, confidence and everything else, he was just the whole package. Songwriting, producing, and having a range that most singers would just kill for. He just really did have it all. And this is why when people say, oh, Prince was the top guitarist of all time, and compare him with other guitarists, talking about top guitarist of all time is always going to be a debate that never ends. But when you're talking about the top artist of all time, it is really difficult to look anywhere other than Prince because of the vocal ability, guitar instrumental ability, multi-instrumental ability, production ability, the studio, confidence, putting on a show, and just he had a hand, not only a hand in everything, but he made sure everything went to plan with his live shows. He just controlled it all 100%, and for that he's got to be the top artist of all time. When you just roll this all up into one person, it is astounding. But let's get back into it. Don't it feel? So, just a few things to point out there. Vocally, he shows off that range and the clarity of tone that he has right at the top of that range, just in control the whole time, to the point where if you weren't watching Prince perform this, you would assume that that was a female vocal that was just singing in the background. But that is Prince just covering all of that range, coming back down into his chest voice. And you might have heard, again, that noise of the jack. And now, if you look, Prince is playing lead guitar here, but we don't hear it because I think that jack has just disconnected. It might have just been destiny that we end with the more orchestral elements and that instrumental side of things, and the crowd singing along and him just walking around at the front of the stage, because it is such a great ending. And so even though we've lost the guitar, we can't hear what Prince is playing, it's still a great performance, and it only just cut out at that last point. And you've got to expect some impact of the rain here, the fact that it's just thrashing it down. But what a fantastic performance all around. We will watch it all the way to the end, but just getting into a little bit of this final piece of playing that we've got, because we're going to be in our A sharp if you want to play along, and we're going to be in this major pentatonic shape, extended shape here, and we've got this all of that kind of stuff going on, really cool. And we also have this little hook that's thrown in there as well. These little places that you visit on the journey of Prince's lead guitar, he'll always just throw in something like that, melodic, that's going to be repeated a few times just to keep your interest. And when he's got that, he'll then go back into his kind of standard playing and then continue to melt your face. But I know that this is going on for a very long time. I did warn you in the beginning that it could do, but let's get to the end and watch this to the end of the performance. I just want to throw in there as well the theatre, the way that Prince has that sheet that's blowing in the wind being provided from underneath, and he's got that silhouette on there. Such a cool idea to have that, and it just brings something totally different to the performance. And like I said, he's thought about everything in this performance. Let's get back into it. And there we have it. What a spectacle, what a performance, and the full pyrotechnics going off as well, perfectly timed with the performance. And considering all of the weather elements to take into consideration here, the fact that nobody lost their footing, and it was just seamlessly performed. And again, apologies about the copyright and disappearing for a while, but hopefully it'll be fine at the next one. We'll see how we get on. But thank you for joining me tonight on this live analysis. Sometimes it's going to happen when we do these things live. You never know what can happen. Like Prince performing in the rain. You never know what you're going to be faced with. But thank you guys for joining me tonight, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!